Welcome to the Emerging Litigation Podcast. This is a group project driven by HB Litigation, now part of Critical Legal Content, and VLEX Companies Fast Case and Law Street Media. I'm your host, Tom Hagy, longtime litigation news editor and publisher, and current litigation enthusiast. If you wish to reach me, please check the appropriate links in the show notes. This podcast is also a companion to the Journal of Emerging Issues in Litigation, for which I serve as editor-in-chief, published by Fast Case Full Court Press. And now, here's today's episode. If you like what you hear, please give us a rating. So today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. That's right, we're taking another run at AI and the law. And I took a beat to ask Google Gemini, or it used to be called Google Bard, its AI chatbot, what it thought about how lawyers are embracing artificial intelligence.
It's not a universal love story.
See how it went right to a human emotion? I feel manipulated already. It's trying to relate to me. So I don't trust it.
But AI is definitely a helpful colleague for many lawyers.
See? Colleague. That's a relationship. I asked it what good it does for lawyers.
AI frees up a lot of time-consuming tasks like legal research, document review, and contract analysis.
Let's keep a little healthy skepticism there, but assuming it does save a lot of time, and I think it will. Of course it will. It's saving me some time. It's giving me somebody else to talk to. What might lawyers do with all this newfound time?
This allows lawyers to focus on the more strategic aspects of their work and spend more time with clients.
I think that's great in most cases, but will they be replaced?
AI isn't taking over law firms just yet.
Just yet? I don't know about you, but I expected to hear a after that.
Lawyers still handle the complex legal issues that require human judgment and creativity.
So bottom line this for us.
Overall, AI is a tool that many lawyers are embracing to improve their efficiency and effectiveness.
Now bring it home.
It's more of a work smarter, not harder situation than a love affair.
Again, with a love affair. So are lawyers looking forward to it? Are they embracing this whole thing? Surveys abound on artificial intelligence and the law, many of them by companies bringing the technology into their products for attorneys. One survey says 3/4 of lawyers expect AI to be integrated into their legal practices in the near term. That's fair. Half say they expect it will boost productivity. That's what Gemini just said. But if half think it's going to boost productivity, that means do the other half not, or is the other half just didn't care? Half feel it will be transformative. So again, the other half, who knows? Other surveys say about 9 out of 10 attorneys are worried about artificial intelligence applications and ethical issues. 9 out of 10. I'd say that's almost all, but it's not. That means 1 out of 10, they just don't care. This is fine. Whatever, bring it on. I mean, come on. In an article she wrote for Above the Law, but no one is above the law. In an article she wrote for Above the Law, you're going to hear even more about generative artificial intelligence in the coming months, especially, she says, as legal technology companies ramp up their generative AI releases. She forecasts a rapid, exponential uptick in the number of new generative AI tools for legal professionals. So get up to speed on it, man. That wasn't her. That was the essence of, I think, what she's saying. Because, as she'll explain, you have an ethical duty to do so. I'll let her tell you about it. And she is Niki Black. She is a Rochester, New York-based attorney, author, and journalist. She is Senior Director of Subject Matter Expertise and External Education at MyCase, a company that offers legal practice management software for small firms. She is the nationally recognized author of Cloud Computing for Lawyers and is co-author of Social Media for Lawyers, The Next Frontier. The Next Frontier. Oh, you'll see why that comes back into play. Those are both published by the American Bar Association. She writes regular columns for the ABAjournal.com and, as I said, Above the Law. She's authored hundreds of articles for other publications and regularly speaks at conferences regarding the intersection of law and emerging technologies. Niki earned her JD from Albany Law School. So here's my interview with Niki Black. I hope you enjoy it. Niki Black, thank you very much for joining me today.
Sure thing. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Are you, though?
I am.
I
For
mean,
sure.
you forgot about me already, so that's we're off to a good start. Now you were writing, and I appreciate that. Yeah. So first, I was just looking at your LinkedIn post today, and you got kind of into a Star Trek sort of thing. So, and,
Yeah.
and I saw some references, and I clearly, I mean, I right away found out that I only know so much. I watched the original series, and I know I've seen all the movies, but new generation stuff, I don't know. I've heard
Yeah.
heard they're quite good, but so
Yeah. I started with Next Generation onward. I never watched
okay.
the original series. So,
Probably to you, the original series would be more of a comedy, because it's just so campy and corny, and
yeah.
I think it was. I don't know if it was intentionally funny, but it was. If you look at it now, it was kind of funny. So what's the through line from Star Trek to your career now? Is there one?
Well, yeah, I think it was. I think I've always been interested in technology as a, it's been an interest of mine. And now that I look back on my life, I sort of see this common thread of an interest in technology. Uh, like my dad brought home a TRS-80 when I was like 12, I think, and I learned how to program it so I could play Pong.
Oh my God.
Um, and then, I took a programming class in college. And when I was in law school, I started watching Next Generation, and that's sort of what got me through law school. So I've always been interested in tech. So it doesn't sort of surprise me in retrospect that I ended up at the intersection of law and technology using my professional degree and combining it with this sort of long time interest. And now I've been with a tech company for 12 years. So
Okay. All right. Well, all right. There is a connection, and so
yeah, there is.
yeah. So for people not steeped in the terminology in this technology, can you just give a kind of a snapshot? What is generative AI in the context of what we're talking about today?
Well, generative AI is a subcategory of artificial intelligence, and it is one that allows usually conversational input, but you can also upload documents or images. It requires some input, and then it provides output in the form of text or images or even videos. And it is essentially almost like a chatbot that or almost like an assistant that will answer questions and provide you with uh, the world's range of information. So it's a really useful tool, and it really, sort of jumped upon the scene in November 2022 when ChatGPT or OpenAI released ChatGPT 3.5, and since then the adoption and the technology itself has accelerated rapidly.
Okay. Yeah. So what accounts for this upward trend in the release of legal technology companies using generative AI tools?
Well, the legal field is one of, I would say, the top 10 fields, almost like possibly the top five, depending on which study you look at, that is most likely to be impacted by generative AI. And so, and that's because it has this ability to uh, significantly replace certain workflows or assist with those workflows in really impactful ways. And for that reason, it makes a ton of sense for legal technology companies to start building this into their platforms, both because it provides utility for their customers, but also because they're uniquely positioned to understand the needs and ethical issues that lawyers face and meet those needs that are in ways that are compliant and provide more trustworthy results, so lawyers don't have to worry as much about the ethical and accuracy issues.
So what we talk a little bit about we'll call them GAI tools for legal professionals on the market. What are some of the ones that are common? Which ones do you I don't know, which ones do you use, or which ones do you see lawyers using?
Well, I tend to, when I speak to lawyers about it, recommend that when they want to initially understand how it works, just get a basic understanding, that they invest in ChatGPT Plus, which is $20 a month, just for a month, and use it in ways where they aren't inputting confidential information, so that they could get a sense of how it works. And I would say that ChatGPT Plus is probably the most popular one, but I know lawyers that use Notion AI and have talked to me about ways that they use that. Claude is another more publicly available one that lawyers use. And then, there's Bing Chat, there's Google Bard, which has been rebranded to Google Gemini. And so, lawyers are dabbling in those to get a sense of how they work, and also Microsoft Copilot, for example. But I think that ultimately you're going to find that lawyers are going to want to have it built into the ecosystem of the software their firms are already using. And that's absolutely happening at a really rapid pace. And so eventually you're going to see by the end of the year, most lawyers using it in the software their firms are using. So law practice management software, legal research software that their firms use, document management software. So I think you're going to ultimately see them primarily relying on those, and also Copilot if they're in the Microsoft ecosystem. You're going to see them relying on the embedded tools, embedded in the tools their firm is already using.
So we're going to get into what steps legal professionals can take to maintain their competence here. But you're saying kind of dive into the tools and test them out.
For sure. I mean, lawyers have a duty of technology competence, and that means that they have to have an understanding of all different types of technology and stay on top of changes so they can make educated decisions about whether to use or not to use technology in their practices. And generative AI absolutely falls under that requirement.
How are these tools being incorporated into practices?
When I give my talks on generative AI, I have a list of 10 different ways the lawyers can use it, the publicly available consumer tools within the confines of ethics requirements so that they're not entering confidential information. And that can be brainstorming, that can be creating document templates, drafting initial drafts of letters. It can be used to come up with questions for voir dire, questions for cross-examination or direct examination, and it can be really effective. It can summarize general legal terms. I definitely don't recommend using ChatGPT for actual legal research, but you can use it to define concepts to sort of get you started on your research path. So there's lots of ways that lawyers can use the publicly available tools, and then once it's built into software, there's so many different ways that you can use it. With practice management software being an example, not only can it be used to draft emails, to draft letters, to draft templates, to create workflows that can then be applied across the system. It can also be used to change the tone of letters, to edit communications. And it can be used on a more broad scale where a lot of companies are working towards this, including the one I work for. In my case, we've recently rolled out generative AI capabilities with a plan to increase the scope of those over the coming year. And so if you think of your practice management software system as a database that is full of all of your law firm's data, documents, contacts, court dates, outcomes, client communications, you can use generative AI almost as as an intelligent assistant to conduct Q&As across your entire system. And that can help you understand how much to bill in a certain case, because you can ask in past cases, how long did typical cases like this one take? How much did we bill in those cases? What did the profit look like? And you can even use it to help you come up with flat fees so you can be more competitive in the future as fees change because of generative AI. So or you can also use it as a knowledge management tool. I know I wrote a memo on a similar this type of issue in a personal injury case in the past. Can you locate that? And it can find it. So when it has access to your firm's entire database in a secure, confined system that protects confidentiality, it can ultimately be an incredibly useful tool. And I think you're going to see that over time.
Sounds like it could be really powerful, pointing at just even at your own data.
100%, yeah. And also creating new, and also just to be an assistant that creates new data, that helps you brainstorm, that creates documents, forms, helps you navigate the system better even.
And you talked about, you said workflows. So how might that work in a practical setting?
I happened to talk with one of our customers coincidentally because I'm on a panel, an ABA ethics conference panel with him. And when we were talking, him and another legal tech consultant, and he mentioned to me when we were preparing for the panel that he was using Notion AI right now to create workflows that he was then applying to my case. So he was using this tool called Notion AI to create a workflow for intake. So one of the biggest challenges lawyers have in our software, and other software has similar functionality, you can create workflows. So you create workflows for intake, you create a workflow for criminal matters, for personal injury matters, for employment matters. But the problem lawyers often have is they will outsource this to a consultant to help them figure out what a workflow should even look like. They have a hard time identifying the different aspects, the different pieces of work throughout a workflow to create that workflow. And so he used Notion AI as like a intelligent assistant to help him talk through workflows for different parts of his practice. And then he created those workflows in my case. And eventually my case is going to have capabilities to create that, I fully expect, within my case. But so that was just an example of how he used these types, use that software to help create workflows. And then those can just be applied every time a new case comes in that's an intake. All of them are intakes, or that's a criminal defense matter. So you have the same intake flow for every new case or every new criminal defense matter. And then you have the same intake for every personal injury matter. And it assigns everybody in the firm different tasks to get that case created in the system, and then to start all the things in motions in place that you have to do as that case rolls along. So it's a really interesting way to kind of start to streamline your firm's process.
Do you need to take care of the dogs?
The mailman just showed up. I wasn't sure.
Okay, you do what you need to do. But
well, that's why they're in the basement, and I think they drove away. The mailman drove away. I think the mailman showed up.
Yeah, there's a lot of hand wringing going on about AI and its misuses and stuff. But so let's just touch on that a little bit. What are some of the risks to the technology, and how can legal professionals mitigate those risks?
Well, especially when you're using ChatGPT or other consumer grade products, there's a lot of issues, right? There's the issue of confidentiality because they use the data to train their systems. In some cases, you can turn that off, like with ChatGPT Plus, you can turn off the training component, but I don't fully trust what that means. And so I recommend lawyers still don't input confidential information into those systems unless they're provided by a legal provider. So first of all, there's that confidentiality aspect. All systems still hallucinate. Most legal companies create some guardrails in the back end, both in terms of the programming and also in terms of reducing the types of inputs you can put into the system to, in turn, reduce the inaccurate responses, the likelihood of inaccurate responses. So that's another issue that lawyers encounter. And also, there are some concerns about privilege and what does it mean if is this system a third party? And that's another issue that's outside the realm of ethics, but the lawyers may need to think about and keep track of what courts' conclusions are when they hand opinions down on these topics. But so there's a range of issues that lawyers need to be aware of and need to track the different ethics opinions and court rulings as they come down on these different topics.
Okay. Well, you talked about ethics rules, so that it kind of takes us to the next question. So what's the impact of the AI ethics guidance handed down first by the State Bar of California's Committee on Professional Responsibility and Conduct, and then what other states are doing?
Well, so it's interesting the different approaches that they've all taken. Thus far, I feel like they're all doing a pretty good job because they're providing guidance rather than hard and fast rules. And some are even saying, which I think is 100% accurate and a correct conclusion, that pre-existing ethics guidance on technology usage is more than sufficient, and they don't need new ethics rules or ethics conclusions that relate specifically to AI. So that's why California, for example, issued guidance rather than an opinion. So, and it was a pretty broadly framed guidance, which I think is the appropriate thing to do with all types of technology, because technology changes so quickly, especially generative AI, that if you provide any sort of narrow conclusions, then it's going to quickly become moot and outdated as the technology changes. So you're definitely seeing, California, New Jersey, North Carolina just issued an proposed ruling. There's another state that I am missing that I also wrote about. But they're all taking a sort of elastic approach, which I think is interesting and appropriate, and providing guidance to help lawyers and navigate adoption. And oftentimes they compare it, which is correct. You need to understand the vendor, how they're going to handle your data, who has access to it, whether it's going to be trained on the data, or whether that can be turned off or precluded altogether. So they are offering really useful advice, and I think you're going to see more and more states handing opinions down as well over time.
Do you have any other warnings that you would suggest?
Well, first and foremost, don't conduct legal research using consumer grade tools. There have been multiple headlines about lawyers using ChatGPT and submitting false case citations and false cases altogether to the courts. But that's more of a competence issue. I like to analogize it to a first year associate or a new paralegal. No matter who provides you with research, you have an obligation to review it. You can't just rely upon that. That's your job as an attorney. That's a basic competence. Your ethical obligation of competence requires you to fully review everything that you submit to the court. So you have to make sure that no matter what draft, who provides you with a draft, whether it's a person or whether it's AI software, you review it, you look at the actual cases and read them and ensure that the conclusions are appropriate. So that's really more of a competence issue, but you can conduct legal research with Thomson Reuters and LexisNexis. They have rolled out generative AI tools into their software. Also, VLex has done the same, which recently acquired FastCase. So you can use those tools, but you got to first vet the providers and make sure you understand the accuracy of the output and how they're handling the information. You have to vet everybody before you use their tools. And then obviously only enter confidential information after you've gone through that vetting process and understand how the data is going to be handled and are satisfied that it's handled with reasonable care that meets your ethics obligations.
Are you seeing concerns about people losing jobs because of generative AI?
Based upon studies that I have seen, and also ones that we've conducted, I oversee and write the My Case Legal Industry Survey report, and we had a whole section devoted to generative AI, and that was just published in January. What I'm finding from that survey and others that I've read is that senior partners tend to think that they can use AI to potentially replace admins, possibly paralegals, and possibly even associate attorneys, but none of them, of course, think that they can replace what they do. So whether it's actually going to replace jobs remains to be seen. It certainly can replace some of the mundane work that every attorney at every level performs and allow lawyers and other legal professionals to focus on more interesting and higher level analytical thought processes. So, well, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But certainly I do think that you may see some of the decision makers in firms thinking that it can replace people below them, just as they think that if they got to conduct layoffs, that's who they're going to lay off. But that perspective isn't going to necessarily go away with generative AI. But I think for the most part, it's going to streamline workflows and make lawyers and legal professionals more productive versus replacing their jobs, at least in the short term.
Yeah, I think that what you said earlier was dive into it. And, is anything like this, rather than being afraid of it's coming, it's here. So dive in and learn it, right? And become, hey, if you're a small office, because a lot of what you do is for small offices, be the person who's expert on AI. It just seems to me it would be like a quality that other people would look for.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good point.
My career advice. Do you give CLE webinars on technology and ethics?
Sometimes I host, I present at webinars for my company. Yeah. There is a ChatGPT generative AI webinar that I presented on, I want to say in November, that focuses on that. And sometimes I do for bar associations. Now that we're basically fully out of the pandemic one way or another, I've been speaking a lot more in person as well on primarily generative AI. That's what everybody wants to hear about. That's what both the providers and the lawyers are most excited about these days. And it's really interesting to see such a high level of curiosity about it from lawyers in a way that I've never seen about any other type of technology. So as someone who tries to bridge legal lawyers and tech, it's kind of an exciting time because they're so receptive to this information.
So if somebody listens to this and gets excited about trying it, your advice early on was to dive in, and you gave some different platforms to try. Not that you have to endorse any, but I mean, if somebody wanted to get off, listen to this podcast and go try it, where are the one or two or three places they should go, and what should they do with them?
I usually recommend that lawyers subscribe to ChatGPT Plus, as I had said previously, for 1 month just to get the hang of it. I think that that's the one that has the most capabilities right now. And that's just easiest to kind of dive into. See if the software tools that you're already using in the legal space have plans to or have already rolled some of this out. So most companies, it's rolled out in beta. For example, like my case, it'll be out publicly soon, but it's in beta. LexisNexis and Thomson Reuters rolled it out publicly at, I believe, the beginning of this year, if I recall correctly, and it was in beta prior to that. So, it's probably either available publicly or definitely in beta or very soon in beta in products you're already using. So that's sort of where I would look to. And sometimes you might miss the announcement, so double check. And if you use a certain practice management tool or document management or legal billing or legal research tool, Google the name in AI and see if there have been any announcements recently and try and get on their beta list if it is, in fact, in beta in that platform.
Okay. Well, tell me about my case. Tell the folks listening what it is you guys do. What value do you bring to? It sounds like small firms mainly, and then how you're incorporating AI into it.
Sure. My case is the company that I've been working for 12 years, and in October of 2020 or June of 2022, we were acquired by Affinipay, and Affinipay is the parent company of LawPay. And prior to getting acquired by Affinipay, we also acquired DocketWise and CasePeer. So Affinipay is the parent company of LawPay, which is legal processing tools for lawyers, payment processing tools, or rather. So it allows you to securely accept credit cards in a compliant manner, and debit payments in a compliant manner. And then my case, DocketWise and CasePeer, are different types of practice management software tools for law firms. My case is a tool for firms of all types, and it allows lawyers to run their practices from lead management to client intake to running the entire case and communicating with clients to billing and getting paid through LawPay. And then CasePeer and DocketWise essentially serve the same functions, but for specific practice areas. So DocketWise is for immigration attorneys, and CasePeer is for personal injury attorneys. So we essentially look at our legal tools as the operating and payment systems for firms of all different practice areas, primarily solo and small firms. But LawPay actually is available across the market and serves 40% of large law firms as well. So we definitely serve the entire market, but our practice management tools tend to focus more on small law firms.
And to the extent of AI being integrated? Yeah.
My case has rolled out beta AI functionality already, and those tools will be rolled out very soon and be publicly available within the platform. And then we have plans to roll out similar functionality across those 3 different other products that I mentioned over the next year. And depending on the product, the functions are going to be different. Immigration firms, for example, are very document intensive. So you're going to see some, depending on what the practice areas look like that the different tools serve, you're going to see different software products served. You're going to see different types of functionality and also similar functionalities across all of them. And obviously with LawPay, since it's payment processing, it's going to be more related to the financial side of things within that tool. So we have plans to roll it out across all of those tools over the next year, and to over time provide even deeper and deeper functionality across those platforms as well with the generative AI tools.
Well, Niki Black, thank you very much for talking with me about this today. I hope to get you back as things, because this is an evolving technology.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me. It was a great discussion.
That concludes this episode of the Emerging Litigation Podcast, a co-production of HB Litigation, Critical Legal Content, VLEX Fastcase, and our friends at Lost G Media. I'm Tom Hagy, your host, which would explain why I'm talking. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have ideas for a future episode, and don't hesitate to share this with clients, colleagues, friends, animals you may have left at home, teenagers you've irresponsibly left unsupervised, and certain classifications of fruits and vegetables. And if you feel so moved, please give us a rating. Those always help. Thank you for listening.